Hello, everyone. This is episode 56 of the Dresden Files podcast, member of the Broken Jars Network, and we have finally returned to the Gear Gadgets Guns series. I'm sorry it's been so long, but it's really in-depth, a lot of research for us to do, and it just took us forever to get only through Blood Rites, because as the books are getting denser, we're not able to mix like two books in one, and Deadbeat terrifies me and how dense it's going to be of gear. I mean, seriously, we got all sorts of new people showing up for that one, and they all have their own gears and swords and stuff. It's like, ugh, okay. But for Blood Rites, obviously there's a lot of significant things happening with the gears and the gadgets, and actually less of the guns. But to start out with, like the big highlights, I guess, is this is when they go standard broker style, having to deal with vampires, and the shield bracelet breaks. Why are you laughing at me, Justin?
Bloker. Are we shortening
I
like
said
Bram?
broker.
Okay, so we're shortening Bram Stoker now too. That's the problem with you kids. All your acronyms.
Oh, shit. I did get his name wrong. Oh, God.
Yeah. It took me a second because I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. It's Bram Stoker.
That's his name, right?
I just thought
it
it
right
was like, I thought you were being hip.
So it's fine because I get to channel Ebenezer then. You know, I get to use his line, be like, it sounded like you said Blampire. I did. So you get an RSVP to the to the party, s'il vous plaît, you know. Whatever. It's the same thing 3 times, but you get the point. So okay, sorry, continue. You're doing,
like I said, this episode is kind of a mess.
Give yourself a hug. You're doing just fine. The episode's not a mess. It's the way that I see it, it's the Matrix episode, and the more I think about it, the more it totally is, because it's like they need guns, lots of guns. The problem is Butcher doesn't really do a lot of description and whatnot. So I feel like we get a lot of, he's got a pistol, an automatic pistol, a semi-automatic pistol, whatever, and it's like chances are he's not walking around the street with like a full auto Glock, you know, but it's possible. It's Kincaid. Who knows? Because somehow he gets his guns wherever he's at. You know? Right. Right, which is possible, because one of the things that kind of bugged me is like this book takes place over the course of a weekend, like most of them do, right? So Kincaid is in town for like 36 hours or something like that is what it feels like. And so he's somehow able to assemble this arsenal. And it's like, certainly he's got contacts, but I wonder if maybe he's got just like caches of weapons everywhere. So
I would say it's likely.
Right, especially in like Dresden's area. Well, I mean, because he did the same thing with Wrigley Field, right, where he had to get all the the shotguns and everything for the duel in Deathmask. So
I feel like it's one thing to get guns; it's another to get a specifically designed boar spear modeled off of how they stab things with sharks on National Geographic to deal with Black Court vampires specifically.
I feel there was a fair bit
or
of
as they're known as Blackfires.
Right. I feel that there was a fair bit of customization, whereas like he probably got the paintball gun from Walmart, you know. So, So do we just want to dive into that part, or?
I guess so. We already are. Let's just go with that structure.
Right. So the Kincaid spear ends up being the focus of his weapon, even though you get a decent like paragraph of the pairs and pairs worth of weapons that Kincaid has, you know, like his little guns, one of which he pulls on Ebenezer when Ebenezer rolls up, right? Because Ebenezer's their wheelman, and locking down Mavra's power somehow. Don't ask too many questions, because Harry doesn't. So Kincaid, of course, is like the gunman, you know, for this. Murphy gets a little stubby shotgun and her outfit. But like the boar spear has this huge blade on it that Harry describes as being able to do piercing and slashing potentially. So I pulled something that I felt like probably matched it, including like a cross brace. Basically, you have kind of like kind of like a spade end on it, with just a little bit of a cross brace, so that you don't wind up to your elbows in Vampire or Devil Dog and whatever as they go into it. And then he had basically he had shotgun shells worked into the handle and worked into towards the blade. It seemed like he had them flanking the blade, and a little trigger that he could work with that. So that one might have been specialized, and honestly, he probably could have gotten away with getting that one shipped because pokey things is probably at least a little bit less scary than things that go boom. But certainly, like getting all of his guns and everything, like I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying like it seems a little bit unlikely that he's moving all of this gear around him every single time he goes on a trip or a job or something like that. So
I mean, it depends. I mean, if you're like a high paid assassin type person like him,
right,
like maybe, and he's old. I mean, I'm thinking private jets, a little bit of hand greasing.
That could be a part of it too, right? He could have his own system for that. So
I mean, he mentioned having already been in an airport, and that's why he was able to get to Chicago so fast. So it kind of sounds like I think he might have mentioned specifically a connecting flight, essentially. So he's not using his own private jet.
Right.
Or maybe he's speaking in code and he's traveling through the Never Never.
Right. And I mean, don't get me wrong as well. Like I've got stories from people that I know and whatnot that I dealt with in some of my situations, but like they had what would be considered by news media at the very least to be an arsenal and that sort of thing. But it was kind of interesting, especially in a place as controlled as Chicago. Like I always went black market first in my thoughts, but I guess the more I think about it, like Kincaid's been doing this long enough, like he could almost certainly, for all I know, he's got it all legit paperwork, but he always kind of thumbs his nose at Murphy when she asks about stuff like that too. It's like, you of course got a license for that, right? So, because that's always her thing. But anyway, so you've got his boar hunting spear, and I was thinking about it. There really are only like 3 weapons that, from the good guys anyway, that make a big fuss during the Blampire,
Brigade,
the Scourge, when the assault on the Scourge and whatever. Because you've got the spear, which Kincaid uses. You've got the short riot gun. It's basically just a sawed-off shotgun that Murphy's using. And then
those phrases are used interchangeably. I'm guessing that they're the same thing, but they have explosive rounds. It's not like she's using things that are just going to knock them down.
Okay. I didn't remember that detail. So, but yeah, they sawed it off because going inside and that sort of thing. But
I suppose I should clarify. I don't know how much of explosive, but she did make a pulpy mess out of a Renfield's head. So like it hit and it penetrated, whether or not it had gunpowder in it. I'm only assuming.
That just went kablooey, or was that the spear?
It was the shotgun.
It was the shotgun, and I'm pretty confident that at that range, that's probably within the firepower of a normal shotgun. So,
and that was the moment that Mavra took a picture of that she used against in Deadbeat.
Correct. Which will totally come up there, right? But yeah, so she does that, and Dresden has his paintball gun, which even still, it's funny because I'm like a gun guy and I've played a fair amount of paintball, and so like the lack of detail is like, come on, Butcher, give me something, But for all we know, Kincaid went to a Walmart somewhere and picked up a paintball gun, because I was kind of thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, so if I had to plan this out, what kind of paintball gun would I use? And I'm like, well, I'd use one like mine, except that mine has some modifications to make it shoot for a further range and some stuff like that. But it's like, honestly, inside of a room, a cheap one would have done. Like, all you need to do is make sure that the little garlic paintballs that he had made up break. So if you don't remember that, the paintball gun was holy water interspersed with garlic rounds, which I love seeing stuff like that. That was like one of my favorite parts of Underworld, for comparison, where they're like, we've got bullets, but they shoot light, and we've got bullets that shoot garlic and bullets that shoot silver and whatever. So
if you want bullets, we got bullets.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I love seeing that kind of detail where he's like, look, it's a weapon, and as Murphy and Kincaid discuss, like, it's a weapon that doesn't hurt the good guys and kills bad guys. Like, it is the perfect weapon, especially for somebody like Dresden, who's half retarded when it comes to, tactile movement and making sure not to catch himself, let alone his allies, on fire,
Yeah, and the only description we have of is that what it looks like, the paintball gun, is it's futuristic looking.
Right.
I
Which
mean,
to Dresden, I mean, come on, anything newer than a 1911 is futuristic looking to him.
yeah.
So like, yeah, I don't know. I don't like it's tough to say it went too futuristic because I'm sure Kincaid is fully aware of Harry's Murphyonic field, right? So he's probably not using a paintball gun with an electronic trigger that shoots 30 balls a second, you know,
Hmm.
because futuristic looking makes me think something like a Spider versus a Titman, which I use a Titman because it's like the AK-47 of paintball guns. Like you can get them dirty and you can run them over and they'll still shoot, type of thing. So I use an older Titman, whereas like that's not really what I get the impression of here. But I'm sure also Kincaid would know that, is that he probably just got him something neat from Walmart. Sorry, I keep mentioning that, but that's just
Really
what I have
focused
in my
on Walmart
mind.
today.
Well, whatever. It could be whatever store in Chicago would sell that. I just figure most of the nation has one of those stores. So he could have gone to a toy store. Some toy stores have them, some hobby stores maybe, but maybe a sporting goods store. But you talk about what you know. So other garlic, they had, they went in broker standard. So they had garlic clove necklaces that they all wore and that sort of thing as well.
Oh, I saw the line that Kincaid had one, but I didn't see him give it to anyone else. I think he was hoarding it.
I thought he had them to hand out to Dresden and Murphy as well. So,
Uh, Maybe I missed that line,
mhm.
but then there's also like you thought on the notes that he gave out machetes to everyone. He only gave a machete to Murphy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm sensing a pattern on your side.
Whatever. Yeah, but fair point. So, touche.
I have a question.
Hmm.
Do bodyguards count as gear?
It depends.
Oh,
Are we talking about the twins? Because they might be like soulless minions at that point.
Yeah, I counted the bodyguards, Barbies, and Kens as gear on the count of Papa Wraith.
They weren't actually animated Barbies and Kens. So, according to Murphy and according to like SI and the Chicago PD, they are people. But yeah, I guess you could make the argument that they're some kind of automaton at that point. I mean, really, because they were pretty stupid in the
Yeah,
end fight. So,
hmm
like for a couple of different things.
tons of different things.
Yeah. Like don't joust with a wizard. We learned that lesson.
I mean, even if you have a car and he has a motorcycle, don't do it.
Yeah. And you have a machine gun because like this is apparently like the 80s, right? Like you can see the A-Team episode where this happens where they're like lean out the window with the machine gun and can't hit the motorcycle and then like the car flips because reasons, but the reason in this case is magic at least. So whereas like on the other side it would be like Mr. T intimidates them and the guy like he chickens out because chicken and flips the vehicle. So very 80s over the top action. So also Harry was right about motorcycles. So
Yes, but it's like I kind of like they feel like they're at least gear. If you have them, they're your own something. They're your assets that you're using against something else. So it's like and at the other side, like SI says, they're people,
uh-huh.
but they don't really think very much. I don't know. It's just so confused.
See, we're about to get into some next generation level, like what does make a sentient person and like whatever. So I'm going to go with the legal definition here. And, despite the fact that they're bad guys, because then we're going to have to ask about like the scribes are probably people, but what about the regular goons, right? Because Michael thinks that they're people. And as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. Like Nicodemus's goons, because they're basically like masked, henchmen as well. So
it also seems like I mean, it definitely is shown in skin games that they're another beyond redemption, right? That they too can be saved, that they're not just mindless automatons.
right. Unfortunately, we never get the chance to find that out about the Barbies and the Kens. So
Yeah, and
I think they might have been like, I don't know if how White Core can basically break people's mind. I think they might have just
right.
been like completely broken, like a Renfield. It's my assumption without knowing.
I mean,
Right.
perhaps not the same amount of broken, but there was definitely a difference between Barbies and Kens versus the bodyguards that you see at Chateau Wraith at the end when Lara's taken over. Because those were definitely not gear. They were, I don't know,
Or
something else. I need another G to be able to put here and
Guys
finish
and
the alliteration.
gals.
Ooh,
Gear, gadget,
guys and
guns,
gals.
and gals. You're welcome.
Oh, that's so much more complicated.
And I mean, is there a non-binary term just to make sure that we don't get hate mail over this one? Like G's? You could just call them G's, right? I don't know.
Like G-men, which are soulless suits.
Yeah, but does that not imply gender as well?
Goons.
Somehow?
Let's just call them goons.
Yeah. Oh, goons. Okay.
Yeah, because they're
Gadget,
funkies. They're
guns, and
thugs.
goons. I like it. Goons is gender neutral. I'll go with that.
Okay, from now on, I'll try to add those in because I hate myself and all the work I have to do.
Because we need more of that, especially like the further we get, the more goons we're going to deal with. And at what point do you become like a lackey or a sidekick and not a goon? So you're treading some dangerous territory here.
But I'm going to need something to describe Binder and all of his goons.
Touche. I dig that. I dig that distinction. So. Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking is like more and more we stop dealing with the one-off monsters, and like other than that we had we had a battle of fairies, we had a couple of nameless red court vampires in death masks, we had the lycanthrope gang, right? But otherwise Harry tends to fight small numbers of people until like later on he starts fighting groups and. Binder's goons and Nicodemus's goons and, so forth and so on. But thank you for bringing up the Binder thing. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, because I hate myself and give myself more work.
Right.
Okay, so to go basically kind of down this gigantic list of gear, there's some like the big bold things right off the top of the bat, like the duster, the baseball bats, the Ford pickup and shield bracelets and things like that. And then kind of go more or less in order of the story as I was reading them. And then like One Piece's missing ear. Or One Ear's, not One Piece. I don't even watch that anime. Oh my God, I can't talk today. One Ear is missing ear being ravaged by Mouse. Like I added that in its gear because it was Mouse's chew toy.
Okay. This is also the one where we see the Snoopy doll come back.
Yes, that was put in because Mouse, yet unnamed Mouse, because he didn't have a name yet.
Right.
And I also added in all the things that were used in the Malochial curses, like the runaway car and bridge and water ski that killed someone in California. Put those in there. All the stuff that happened when Giselle, the porno actress, was getting killed or almost getting killed in the shower.
Right. Like the glass and stuff?
Yeah, the glass and like the water on the floor and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, you definitely focus on some interesting things. Like I'm definitely macro level where it's like, the obvious stuff like, Ebenezer's Ford, you got to make sure and mention getting Kincaid's battle armor and all that stuff. And something that I started picking up of this read through that I've been following through is I'm being a little bit more mindful of foreshadowing, because I felt like there was a fair bit of that during the opening chapters with the monkey sequence and everything like that, because they're throwing flaming poo, and he specifically describes it as being hit and then sliding off kind of like napalm. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting alliteration for like what's going on in this book, because later on there's going to be actual napalm. So yeah, there were some things like that I was like, yeah, he's pretty good with that foreshadowing stuff. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but
I would err more on the side of it was intentional than not when it comes to Jim. But sometimes he just get lucky, I think.
Yeah, I give him the benefit of the doubt, because there are definitely some things where I'm like, man, I am definitely not this clever if I were having like a live conversation. So you can tell, hopefully this came out in like an editing process, like over 6 iterations. I'm like, sure, if I had a conversation 6 times, I'd be really fucking witty. You think I'm witty now? Like,
at some point, apparently I was detailed enough. I noted that Dresden used a doorknob. I'm starting to question myself.
Yeah, no wonder it takes you so long to get through these books.
Like, okay, it's
Make note. Use doorknob. This is
important
important.
enough that, like, okay,
Right.
at some point, Joan has an apple and she throws it at Jake. And I noted it because she used it for something. It's like, but I'm also questioning myself. Like, I'm not sure if I should list doorknobs because this took months to do anyway. But
Wow. Yeah,
the one
because
thing I made sure of doing is like noting anything that was used for not its original purpose. Like when Lucille tries to blow dart Harry, he uses a cigar container to put the dart in. It's like that seems kind of significant. I'm also trying to pay attention to the various clothes that everyone are wearing because I find that that's an easy way of getting something like foreshadowing of what that person is. Like Laura is almost always wearing white with red roses.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't really put that together. Like I kind of got the kimono thing, so I guess it makes sense, but
like she's wearing like a white blouse and not a red skirt, or she's wearing like a white something or other that's just got like embroidered red roses on it. She very much goes on that. And then yeah, the robes when in the deeps, Madge and Trixie were wearing white silk robes with red lining on it. It's like there's like as much as they go into white, they also have red at the certain points.
Interesting.
And like how obvious are they going to be about wearing just nothing but white because they can't think beyond that color?
Right. It's also a color of purity, and so maybe they're trying to throw you off or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
One question though. What's a humidor?
What now?
It's something to do with cigars. So I'm sure I could just like Google the word, but this is more fun.
I mean, it's a cigar box, and I think it's so it's humidity controlled, and it's basically used to like let them breathe, but not too much, I think is the whole idea. So I do not smoke cigars. Half of that is because somebody told me once in a fever dream, and half of that was because I did a quick Google search. But yeah, I think I looked that up at one point too, because there's stuff like that. He'll throw those in like for Deadbeat. You know, I'm in the middle of reading that, and one of the things that we'll have to look up and whatnot is like, you know, the corpse taker uses a tulwar, you know, and that sort of thing. And it's like a very specific kind of weapon. And Thomas uses a kukri, but at least that's semi, you know, like pretty pop culture-y, and most people know what a kukri are these days and that sort of thing. But I've had people be impressed that I knew. And so you know, there's just, he likes to use these things, and yeah, I don't smoke cigars, so humidor didn't really hit the right buttons for me. So
but I did try to describe what they have on the set for the various porno things. Like, so this one's supposed to look like an alleyway, and that one's supposed to look like a bar, and then Mouse is set on the bar and he's walking around and being all cute. And I described the pictures that are of Arturo Genosa and his various wives. It just kind of copy pasted their description into the document because those seem kind of significant,
right?
In terms of, I can argue it, but also I realize I'm ridiculous.
Well, like it was just described in such detail as they were. Like he just wanted them to be distinct from each other, I think.
Right.
Why they're like so different.
Yeah, and you're kind of getting Harry's perspective too, because I remember paying particular attention to that scene, but he because Harry didn't know who they were, right? It was just like, here's Arturo with so and so and the other two, you know. And so like he does describe them, but you don't necessarily get to meet one of them entirely, right? Like one of them basically tries to shoot him with a blow dart and then winds up dead later. And so you never really see her on screen. And so like, you know, that's what it turns into, is like, we got these really detailed descriptions of one person we never really see, and then the other one we don't meet until later, who is covered head to toe in cultist robes, you know, because she's a psycho and has a little bit of magic. So yeah, it's an interesting scene, but there was never a full like payoff or whatever. Just like Arturo likes to date porn stars, apparently, you know.
It makes me wonder though, what was the thing that made Trixie say "rotten hell, you pig"? What did Arturo do that made Trixie call him a pig? Unless she's just labeling that at him because why not?
It was actually not something very bad, if I remember right. I haven't read this book in a while though, but do you remember, Justin?
Well, I don't. I don't recall a specific thing. So go ahead and say your piece, and then I'll pile on. So
I can't remember. I just remember. I remember this. I remember this scene vaguely where it's like he didn't really do anything bad. She was just being, obnoxious and spoiled.
right,
Or like, rotten hell, you pig, for basically nothing.
right.
If I
Now,
remember right.
I'm not going to say that's entirely what happened, but what I was going to say is that there is plenty of evidence that she is stuck up in her own head, and so it could have been nothing, right? I mean, just look at how she treats Harry from like immediately, and the whole, not remembering the name, which pays off later with the whole she can't tell the police what Harry's name is. So that kind of between her being tweaked out of her mind and not being able to remember her attacker's name doesn't exactly put a bunch of, impetus on them trying to find him for once. But yeah, so like Trixie is just in her head and stuck up and all this other stuff. So it's entirely possible that it was nothing, that maybe she was just greedy and Arturo had enough. But honestly, the impression we get from Joan, right, is that Arturo falls hard and is stuck, so she probably just decided, she had gotten what she wanted out of him and left him and whatever else, because it just seems like he just is like schoolboy in love, right? That's how they kind of describe him, is that he falls in love like it's his first time every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, I don't recall finding out for sure. So,
yeah, I don't think it was ever described, and it's just like, that's interesting thing to add in as a description.
So if you've got something to talk about, that's fine. But I'm scrolling through the list, kind of going in order here. And I mean, how many pages is this? Do you know? Because this is why we can't go like fully in order, and we're kind of hopping around. But I want, it's how many?
23.
Okay, yeah. I was like, there's no way 3 is the right number, so I must have misheard you. So 23 pages. So, but I got to the bear buckle, which is a very hot topic. So I figured we should talk about like one of the greatest scenes, maybe in the files, but certainly in this book.
So let's start at the beginning of the scene of like Lara and her tiny little guns, whatever they were, not really described,
right,
trying to kill Harry and Thomas.
Okay, I mean, we can start from that point, but I mean, there's a little bit of a chase leading up to it and stuff like that. So
yeah, but as I was going through this time, the fact that she was in 6-inch heels never not was mentioned. And
right.
Because Dresden was like, wow, you must have magic to do that or something. So maybe, right. I don't know. I'm more impressed that she's running around in Chicago and Monterey. But
right. And I mean, she has no qualms about eating people, which Thomas doesn't up to this point as well, right? So while she doesn't have, Lord Wraith's power, which, by the way, I just think that's his first name. So Lord Wraith's power, she's still, I'm sure she eats very regularly. So using her powers is no problem at all. And it'd be trivial for her to do
some form of magic in order to make sure she can run in 6-inch heels across gravel and streets and
less magic, or like because mostly we see the hunger makes them better, right? They're still human. It doesn't make them bulletproof, but they get a healing factor and they get super strong and that sort of thing. So having the ankle strength and the calf strength and the balance to be able to run in 6-inch heels, then. And maybe she makes the heels tougher, like they're made out of some material because they're also weapons,
Yeah, well, it was when a little bit later, one of her shoes get kicked off and Harry picks up the 6-inch heel and stabs a vampire with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But after that little chase,
speaking of vampires, do we put frozen turkey as a gadget?
Yes. Well, no, it's a gear. I didn't put it as a gadget. Okay. It's a gear. Because a gadget means it's got some form of moving parts, and that's as much as I could dependably go with.
Which is ironic because
I just wanted to know where we had the frozen turkeys, or if all, because it's actually derivative from a spell.
Yeah, no, I added the things that were like in all the various curses. I added them in because like they're ritual gear. right?
She put the broken glass from a broken shower. She put the damn turkey. You can be assured of that. So probably even the
Maybe we could
little
get through these
timer,
faster if
you
we
know.
weren't that nitpicky.
But where's the fun in that?
Whatever gets your rocks off, man. So
Whatever
you
you
know.
like.
Yeah, I look, and that's my thing. It's like I'm a nerd, right? But I'm a nerd about things that I enjoy. So I go and look at the paintball guns. I go and look at the weapons and stuff. Like I was super excited to get to the attack on the Red Cross, and the Scourge and everything like that. And there were some neat things in the meantime. But yeah, I'm not like some of this is minutia. Like it is the root of trivia. You got trivial stuff in here where it's like, okay, if anything ever cut somebody, like I can't wait till you get deadbeat. And when they reach through the window to get Butters, Harry gets scored by broken glass. And you're going to include that because little glass shards bounced off of Harry in this scene. So, because I just read that. So now I foresee the future. But, okay. So anyway, the turkey, the bear belt buckle, very hot topic.
This is also in that same scene when Inari takes the blasting ride and breaks it over Harry's head, and then he gives her half of it and says, "Make like Buffy."
Right.
So that's always fun, especially when you're doing the audiobooks and Marsters is saying it.
Yes. Also, yes. That is a level of irony I had not appreciated until now. So
how did you not appreciate that?
How did you not appreciate it? I feel like I don't know if Marsters had like read the first few books by the time Blood Rites came out, and and Butcher was just like, we gotta get me a Buffy reference up in here for the audiobook.
Sure. And I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Obviously got the Buffy reference. That was, one of the first serialized shows that I kept on top of and whatever. But yeah, I was missing the other half of the irony of having Spike tell a vampire to make like Buffy to stab a more different vampire. So yeah, it is good. It is like, there's like 4 layers there, and I was only appreciating like 2 of them. So thank you for that.
So now the bear buckle. That's
never
mentioned again.
Correct. Because time is hard and stuff is hard and things are hard.
And that little thing made him too good from what I've heard. But it did, like we had the conversation an episode or 2 ago of how long it lasted. And it certainly lasted from this fight to wherever they had to get to in Blood Rites or Chateau Wraith. Right. And then petered out right when he was trying to stop Justine from killing herself.
Right. And so I think that shifted the argument from it's probably not time-based so much as it was fuel tank-based, right? Because it's like if he had gone another 5 minutes in the fight, maybe he would have collapsed right there. But because, okay, sure, it lasted for multiple hours, but he mostly sat in a car ride and then carried somebody inside after a quippy dialogue and then fell asleep, So yes, it did last for many, many hours, but not really functionally.
Yeah, it lasted for like, I'm guessing maybe 2.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, how do you have to fill that? I mean, like as the kinetic rings every time he's moving his arm, that's when it's getting filled. Is he having to like be really weak at some point and really vulnerable in order to put stored energy into it? And maybe that's not worth it. Did that make any sense?
No, yeah, it's a pretty typical kind of idea that you see in fantasy where like some magic items you've got to power up with like your daily power or whatever. I'm trying not to make D&D illusions, but that's kind of where we're going here and that sort of thing where it's like it takes time and energy to craft these things, and that's implied pretty heavily in the Dresden Files. And it seems like for them it's almost even more taxing because otherwise everybody would be doing it all the time. It's that it takes a whole lot of time just to do a potion is 8 hours. So imagine working on a bear buckle, every day for 3 months so that you can have 5 minutes of go juice. Not to mention that at this point in time, we're still pre-Harry's extra magic item budget, because that's what he mostly starts doing with his warden budget, is that he starts building more gadgets, aka it all gets sunk into Little Chicago at some point.
Harry is such a magic nerd.
It's true. And that's kind of
More-
what Butcher
more
talks
money.
about
Ooh,
too.
more gadgets, like more happy things.
Oh yeah,
Maybe if I got more money, it would just be like, ooh, yeah, I can go buy stuff for my computer and stuff. Yay!
right, exactly.
You mentioned that the foreshadowing seems to be happening a little bit more in this book, which I don't know about more, but at the end fight in the deeps, Harry magnetically throws a set of keys at Papa Wraith, whatever his name is.
Right.
And there's like
Lord.
a couple sentence description of how damaging that would be.
Right.
But in like when Thomas is running away from Lara, he does the same thing at her.
Uh-huh.
And there's no like 2-sentence description of how damaging that would be. So it's I wonder if that was entered in like an edit, and that's why we didn't get the whole.
So the thing with Laura, actually, though, that was intended as a distraction, wasn't it? Like Harry kind of works out that Thomas had to have assumed that she was going to move out of the way, and that was going to give them the extra half a second they needed to like get the gun out of Thomas's waistband, so that Harry could pretty much like he fumbled it, didn't he? Like he basically botched the whole thing anyway. But that's the way I kind of remember it going down, is like that was all part of the distraction, because she had him dead to rights. Like she had her guns drawn. They were both in an awkward position one way or the other, and that was all part of the distraction. Whereas like he's actually trying to like hurt Lord Wraith and flinging at him with magic and
so I found it is that Thomas throws the ring at Lara, or ring of keys at Lara, and she swats it aside with a gun. And that was the gun that was going to be shooting Harry, so it saved Harry's life, essentially.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, that's just my thought, my headcanon, whatever you want to say, is that it wasn't necessarily being used as a weapon at that point. You know, it's more like throwing the gun at Superman, you know, if you're familiar with that reference, and the whole like you empty the chamber into Superman and then throw the gun and then he's got to duck because, you know, it's a physical prop. So it's a good joke. If you haven't seen that scene, I'm sure it's on YouTube. So it's great.
There's a reason I kind of dislike comic book movies.
Because you hate fun. That's what the reason is. So
I'm starting to think I just dislike comics.
Because it would take you 30 years to catalog all of the glass that is broken in a superhero movie to include it in this list.
No, it'll take me 30 years to catalog all of the internal inconsistencies.
All right, we're gonna do this. So I'm gonna pick a movie that I want you to watch, and then we're gonna throw down at some point. So we'll do it for a different podcast. But what's gonna happen?
I've seen Avengers. You know, I've had that argument with you guys before. It's just not good.
Then you're gonna have. So we're gonna watch Ragnarok together then. So because there's no way you could hate that movie. I don't believe it's possible.
It's like
you put a freaking paper plate in here. What is wrong with you?
Which paper plate are you talking about?
Joan's paper plate. She puts on a bunch of food.
Yeah, she's like, it was a notable thing about her is that she eats a lot, so she was going around picking up a bunch of pastries, and she needed a plate to hold it.
But that's not a gadget or a gun.
It's gear. The thing that holds your food is gear.
No.
And the paper plate that Mama Murphy used. The paper plate that Mama Murphy used in order to give Harry hamburgers, that was also kind of significant because like that lady is awesome. And she knew exactly how he wanted his hamburgers.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, it was just probably like, like she made a perfect burger. So
that had everything he wanted on it except for the cheese, which he didn't want. So it was perfect. She knew exactly it.
And I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, I thought I was getting a little silly by including like the generator and the TV that the boys have at the park. So
and the bouncy house and the soccer game and the volleyball and the badminton and the sports whistle.
Also might be a bit overkill, but I can understand them more than a goddamn paper plate.
And a doorknob.
The doorknob is ridiculous.
And the two different signs, the dressing room sign and the green room sign, you know. Because how else would you know?
I mean, how else would you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
I also added in McDonald's.
Awesome.
That Harry got as like a drive-by.
McDonald's sacrilege.
I was going to say it is important because it is a deviation of character at this point. So it tells us something important. I don't know what, but it does tell us something important.
Also added in shoelaces of Harry's that Mouse was playing with.
Wow.
Anything with Mouse, I'm going to put in because it was just cute.
At least you didn't like include Harry's pocket separate from the duster because he keeps getting put in the pocket. So
don't give me ideas, man. I added in coffee and donut and Gatorade. Yeah, hey, food is gear. The thing that holds your food is also
consumables.
Gear. Which it's gear.
Consumables.
Right.
Okay, put a G word with it and add it in.
Consumables?
Yeah, no. Okay, so I like where your head's at, and I want to revisit this later. Consumables sounds amazing, but I was thinking gastronomics or gastronomy, because that's a G word that has to do with food, right? So okay. I like how you included the frozen turkey and thermometer as one line item, so we didn't get a separate one for the thermometer. That was good.
As I was getting more lazy, I was just grouping things together. Like instead of detailing all of the things in the gym bag, I put there is a gym bag and it has this stuff in it in the description.
Right, which is what I did with.
That is unacceptable slack, really.
Yeah, I did that.
The girl who put in the paper plate.
Well, she didn't individually list the contents of the paper plate either. She put that in the description, so there's a small mercy there. But I did the same thing with Kincaid's battle rattle and Harry's nylon backpack because he uses that. Is that the one that he uses to set up the feng shui at the porno set, or was that a more different nylon backpack? So
I'm assuming it's the same nylon backpack.
Let's see.
I did note this time
I think it is the same, yeah.
That the chalk that he used is blue. Because protection. He's stuck with that color.
Oh, no, I'm not going to give you that one. Now, I appreciate it, right? And I like this level that is something I hadn't thought of either. But if you've ever used the damn chalk line, things that they're using, I'm sure there are other colors, but I've never seen one in the flesh that wasn't blue. So, so I'm not going to give you that one.
Maybe I don't have any construction experience. But, I was kept noting all of the clothes that people were wearing because I find the uniforms for the Kens and Barbies or Papa Wraith, all that was kind of interesting. I just put in quotations tight everything for Murphy's sister.
Right.
And then I described what she's actually wearing, but it's I'm having fun with it.
Well.
That's one of the better scenes in all of the books. I really like Dresden meeting Murphy's family, and
I want the reunion again in the very awkward family.
Reunion now that they're gonna be together for a bit until someone dies or something. But
guess what? I hold on. I'm reading the future. It's gonna be in peace talks. So
everything's in peace talks. And
because parallel to all the supernatural baddies being in the area, we're going to have Thomas and Justine's baby shower, and the Murphys are family, right? So the whole family's going to be there, and of course the baby sister's going to have a baby shower at the same time because it's got to be all about her. And I could write it. It'd be a thing.
You're right.
And among all the clothes descriptions, I actually didn't put this one in, I don't think. Justin did. It was pink panties with little white bows.
It's important. It's important and influential. Come on, talk about things that are singled out, the whole pants scene and everything anyway, because that's how you know that there are 3 weapons, because somebody's got to hold Murphy's gun. So Harry's got to juggle the paintball gun, and her pants come off. It's how many other people's pants are noticeably taken off in the entire series? So
name a White Court vampire.
That's slightly different because you definitely get a little bit in that in Deadbeat. So thank you for that. I'm gonna make a note for my Deadbeat stuff that I'm gonna go back and find out what the jogger was wearing in the first scene in Deadbeat. So, but which also has one of my favorite opening things.
Oh yeah.
So.
The 2 books right after the other, pretty good in the opening descriptions.
Yeah, when reading it, so the first time through, especially, Death Mask has my favorite ending chapter, and Blood Rites has my favorite opening line. So to have those back to back, but I definitely love the opening for Deadbeat. So when we get to there, that'll be great. But yes,
Oh,
so yes, I noted Murphy's panties. Guilty.
I have a philosophical question about all this.
Okay.
I made a decision to not include any of Thomas's mental landscape when they did the soul gaze because it's not real, right?
Does that mean that in Deadbeat we should include Harry's wall? Like,
I did
and does that
include
mean
a wall in gear
that
because Murphy threw Kincaid at it, and that was
maybe
good enough.
this is an important standard and precedence that we're going to set right now, because in Ghost Story we're going to
Right?
have the Bridge of the Enterprise, and how much of that are we going to log and deal with? So,
Okay, it'll be ghostly gear, you know?
oh,
So
ghostly
I'll
gear,
include it.
guns. Okay,
Yeah, and
so
goons.
and yes, ghostly goons. There are ghostly goons. Many ghostly goons. Wow. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
Ghost Story is going to be terrible.
it's yeah. I mean, because otherwise I could see Ghost Story being like, 15 things, which, trust me, that is not very many for what we've got on this list. 23 pages, and there's like 20 items a page, so that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but only just. So
Among
Only a
the
slight
things
one.
taking up space like a doorknob, there's also the bookshelf in Harry's apartment because Mister was sleeping on it, and
okay.
I decided to add it.
I mean, why? Why?
Because
Why?
Mister's adorable, and that matters. So
Yes,
yeah, and so
Speaking
speaking
of
of,
Mister,
yeah, go for it.
I'm just that's my
kitty.
Mister.
Oh yes, I
He's
gotcha.
pointing at his
The
kitty.
over the
Yes.
shoulder
I would
kitty.
just see in the background he was moving, so I was like, oh look.
I did note the cat, but I more noted the finger in the foreground, and I was like, I thought you were going to make a point, and no, you were pointing at the kitty. So yeah, good work. So one thing that I noted here, and I'm not sure I got like an explanation, or maybe I've forgotten and that sort of thing, but talking about minutia that might actually make sense and might actually be a thing later because of it was oddly detailed, was when they were looking at the portraits of the conquests, for lack of a better word, because Lord Wraith, and that's kind of what's going on there, and we get the full name, of Amelia Alexandria Salazar. I remember having a discussion about this before, but I don't remember if
That
anything
was
came of it.
brought up because when we were doing the Q&A that I can't remember anyone's name, Colin was asking what was the name of the first person, and it was like, that's got to be Lara's mother, right?
Right.
So it stood out, and like that's one of the only other ones who gets a name, the other
Right.
one being Margaret. So it is interesting that she's important enough for a name.
Right. But we don't know anything about it. So
Just that she's Mediterranean woman, presumably from coloring. Clothes suggested that she lived in 16th or 17th century.
right. Yeah, interesting. So, but that was definitely something that I was like, yeah, that should probably get brought up, because we'll have our top people look into that one. So, but
And
yeah, I guess
Margaret's
since we've
portrait
talked about it and we haven't
is
solved the
mentioned.
mystery. So, sorry, go ahead.
Margaret's portrait is also
But-
mentioned and described separately.
Right.
By having our top people look into it, do you mean mention it casually and then have Elder Scruff tell us in the
Yes.
Reddit?
Well, he's not the only one, right? So but yes,
It's just the most often occurring one.
the something Beta Asylum. There's a reason why you guys are referenced as being living in a crazy house. So, because like I said, I think that I'm a nerd, and I think I'm a fair nerd for a lot of things. But holy crap, there are definitely bigger nerds than I am for their specific, like genres or stories or whatever. But yeah, like in the Dresden Files, like I am a hanger on in comparison. So
Yes, we are nerds, but they are encyclopedias.
yes, right. Hmm. We should talk about something while I'm tying something
You're
together,
thinking
but Google
Okay.
gave me an interesting hit that if something pans out, then I will let the class know. But otherwise, you got thinking names. So
Okay. So, could go down a little bit where the stuff is going on in the deeps. I mean, I could basically put the deeps furniture, and what's in there is like a lot of excess in design of trying to make sure that there's a throne and everything around it looks like a peacock, essentially, of how overdone it is. And
is that why
somehow
he
those,
did the swords and everything? Oh, sorry, different throne.
yeah, slightly different. That's a little bit too abrupt for a white court.
Right.
But then there's these hidden lights that somehow are still working even after all of that magic is thrown around, because those are the ones that Lara turns back on at the end. It's like,
Really
I
well
get
made.
that she turned them off at some point, but seriously, they still work?
It's just really well made.
It was important to set up what 3 books in advance, because those lights are going to be very important when we get back to them in White Knight, and we have a wizard duel in the deeps. So I'm just saying he had to set that up years in advance. Talk about foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So.
He actually really is good, rather good at foreshadowing. Gotta give him that.
This is a high fantasy hat now. It's like, that's the benefit of having a plan. Okay, I'm done.
Right. Part of it, because there are definitely some things where, I mean, you can see some of the loops, and some of it, I like, at least he admits to, he kind of got lucky on, right? Like, Butters and some other stuff like that. But it's, I mean, there's lucky and then there's good, I think. And at some point, you're good enough to make your own luck. And like, there are just some things where it's like, when you read it, it's just like he put so much time and effort into it because it's so seamless to me. That it's so great. Like multiple foreshadowings that we wind up with Butters, for example, over multiple different books. And that's just an example. So I didn't mean to bring it up like it only just kicked off in Blood Rites. It's more like I finally clued into some of it that I hadn't been catching on to before. Because I got to admit, I had to have people tell me about the ghost storyline and the how it worked out in Deadbeat and things like that with some of it, that it's like almost tenuous enough to be fan theory, but it almost has to be canon because, it just worked out too well to be anything other than, then Butters being not quite a knight, so he came to help Harry stop not quite a Denarian. And,
I feel like that probably was planned around that point. Like he introduced Butters as a throwaway character. People liked him.
Uh-huh.
Like they liked him back from when he was just there quickly to explain something to Harry 2 books back or something. So he brought him back, and he was like, "What am I gonna do with him?" And then he was like, "Well, we are gonna need some knights, and I haven't really decided yet." And
right.
This makes sense. I think that's something like that is how what happened, right? That's how it probably worked out.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I mean, the lightsaber thing almost certainly was planned at that point, I think. But still, in hindsight, to go like read Ghost Story and be like, "Hey, Butters, what are you going to get in the ring with us?" Oh, about 5 minutes after I get a functioning lightsaber. It's like, you son of a bitch. That was amazing.
That was definitely planned. Yeah. I mean, imagine how hard it must be to be Jim Butcher and like write the Dresden Files and just know all that shit you got planned, but you can't tell anyone because that would decrease the value of the whole story and the books and selling them and everything. It's like you're either a sadistic person who's like, "Ha ha, I won't tell you," and that feels really good, or it's like, "Oh man, it's killing me. I really want people to know."
Right.
Why are you confused? It's definitely the first one.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe he says that, but I'm not sure.
He will happily just think, "I'm not going to tell you," anytime he does a Q&A.
Honestly, though, I think it'd be hilarious as shit to find out that like half the time he's like, "That's a really fucking good question. I'm not going to tell you because I got to go figure it out."
Yeah,
so
that's a good question. That's very well observed, but I'm not going to tell you, holy shit, I need to figure this out.
I mean, to be fair, right, we already know he's part fairy and he's part wizard, and he has to write both of them, right? So rule number 1 about being a wizard is never let him see you sweat. It's bad for the image. And fairies never lie, but they always tell you something that pretty much is as good as a lie. So, if not better than a lie in some cases. But yeah, he's definitely a fairy in that regard. So that's why I'm waiting for like his one big lie is going to be something like, he keeps saying Justin's dead, and it's like, it'd be a whole lot easier if he weren't, but okay. So, but
D-E-D, dead.
Right, he's pretty dead.
Harry wasn't dead. There's been dead, and then there's that dead. Who knows? Maybe he's not that dead.
Right, and to be fair, Butcher has also written comic books, right? So he knows that just because you're like dead doesn't still mean that there aren't things out there that can't make you alive again. So for all we know, that's going to be the thing,
that was the whole thing of the Hercules movie, right? At the end, and then they actually went into Hades, and people, you could find them. You could pull Socrates out.
Right. Yep. Okay. There we go. Book 20. Nicodemus is going to go get his daughter back. So, thus proving that he cared the whole time.
Do you guys think that? Okay, this is totally off topic, but I wonder if there ever will be, because he keeps like getting hinted at, and then not, then no, he always chooses the dark path. But I wonder if there will be like a redemption point for Nicodemus where he chooses the good thing.
I almost count on it, but at this point, it's been predicted for so long that it almost would seem contrived. But Nicodemus definitely seems like kind of like Cal was, right? So Cal was like, I don't think I'm crazy, but if I was crazy, how would I know, And I feel like Nicodemus is going to be the whole like, no, I'm the good guy, and like I've been doing the good things the whole time, right? Because doesn't he almost say as much to Harry at one point, where it's like, that he's actually trying to save humanity somehow? And
I get the impression that he's basically fighting the outsiders, but through the fallen angels and devil side. But his intention is still fighting the outsiders. And that's how he feels like he's saving humanity.
In a small favor. But Harry says, like, oh, you're just a saint. And Nicodemus says, in due time, yes.
Right. Yeah, so that's, I kind of, half expect something like that, where it's like, Harry's going to, because we get a whole lot of moral, philosophizing and that sort of thing from Harry, where it's like, nobody's the villain of their story, right? Nobody just wakes up and starts with an evil laugh and that sort of thing. And so, like, it's right. It's definitely out there. So, I pretty much expect it at this point, but I'm totally willing to ride out the next couple of years to find out. So, is there any other big stuff that we should cover? Because we're getting pretty close here.
Yeah. Well, I didn't remember one thing I wanted to bring up is that during the fights with all the Black Court vampires, the only time that they ever used an actual weapon was the flamethrowers, like the vampires themselves. Like everything else is just like teeth and claws, and that was it. It's like,
Do we count the axe that totally Mavra used on Harry?
Well, the axe is in there, but I wasn't thinking of them as in terms of like the other various things. Like One Ear is, I think he's just entirely teeth and claws.
Right, because it's very Buffy, right? So.
Probably.
Yeah, because when they jump him, like when One Ear jumps him in the first place and gets hit with the holy water balloon, the holy water balloon, that's where he gets his One Ear, right? So, so that's a thing, and he mostly was just trying to choke him out there, which is a great scene too, because Thomas is like, "Holy crap," and then towards I guess the next encounter that I can remember is the whole Lara and Thomas and Harry showdown with the turkey, and there was like 3 or 4 of them there, and they didn't use any weapons.
Yeah,
so
they're just entirely fist fighting and teeth, and they did like nibble on Lara a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it like overpowered and started biting, So, which important to note, they don't seem to have pronounced fangs like say the Red Court, for example. So,
but I don't think so. They're just like very like. You're a corpse, you're a zombie, something like that.
Yeah. They get like super strength, and they get some other stuff, and Mavra probably is closer to Dracula out of, Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? She's got some magic, obviously, which is still separate because that freaked them out all the way back in Grave Peril. And definitely comes up here again where it's like, shit, she might actually be as powerful as a true wizard instead of just a sorceress, which is part of why they brought Ebenezer in. And then, just having, otherwise they're just like really fucking strong and presumably heal over time, but they still desiccate because, they're dead in reasons. So,
Yeah, reasons that just got to make them gross, I guess.
yeah. So,
but other than all the various other minutiae I added into this document, I think we've kind of described most everything that happened in terms of the gear and the gadgets and the guns and the food and the paper plates and all things like that. And the goons.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too. Oh, sorry.
I kind of ignored the children. I just kind of like, there's the bodyguards. Those things are too robotic.
Right.
But,
yeah, because it was, they talk about it in the deeps, right? That it's like, clearly she doesn't have a whole lot of initiative or it was prior to that because it's when he's being searched because he's like, grab this, grab that, grab the other thing.
But don't look for anything else.
Forget the sword cane, so.
Yeah. Right, but we've covered blood rites, and next will be Deadbeat, and that will be very long. I'm guessing closer to 30 pages.
Really? You think Deadbeat's that long?
Well, in terms of how much stuff is going to be in it, because we've got a bunch of new wardens
zombies and shit. And the wardens. Like I haven't gotten that far, right? So I'm just barely to where they got to
all of the different necromancers and all of the different people.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of Sheila.
And how much broken glass is in there? I mean, there's so much.
Why do you stick on the broken glass?
Each individual piece of broken glass, like glass with one,
because
two,
even still, the doorknob is functional. I mean, even Master Ferris philosophizes on the function of a doorknob, right?
And how they used to make sense before.
Like broken glass, that's like, next we're going to be cataloging the rubble.
It did things to her.
How much ash was in this book because Harry burned down not Harry, right? Because this was the one time he didn't burn down the building, right? But we got to catalog every time he burns down a building for these lists.
Things I used to know how they worked.
Right.
Oh, so on an ending note, it is now 1 a.m. in my country. It means it's the 11th of December and my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yay!
Good timing.
Right?
Okay, that is a good ending note, I think, for Blood Rites. Why not? Okay, let's plug all of our stuff.
I'm good with it. So, this is Dresden Files podcast. We're part of the Broken Jars network. So, talking about other members of the network here. Andreas, it's important for you to know on your birthday that it's dangerous to go alone. So, we have a podcast for you for that. Dangerous to Go Alone talks about nerd culture and that sort of thing. We've got the Great Scott podcast, which talks about The Office. And then we've got your other podcast, which is High Fantasy.
Yes. It's something to do with writing in general and a lot of fantasy books because that's what I'd read of. So if I have to reference, like, this is how you do it, just like that's a perfect example. It's going to be more often than not Sanderson. Talk about Sanderson a lot. But yeah, that's High Fantasy.
There you go. And then it's us, and then it's The Long Haul, right? Which we've got a couple episodes out there anyway.
Yeah. And we're heading into the end of the year. We're going to do an end of the year special.
Yeah. Yep. Like Doctor Who Christmas special stuff, right?
Date to be determined, I think. We haven't set the date yet, right?
No, we set a date.
We did? I've just forgotten.
And we're going to do the Secret Santa stuff soon.
Yay.
All right. That's it. So, bye-bye. Happy birthday.
Bye.
Bye.